Whether you've seen the original theatrical release of Justice League or not, Zack Snyder's massive re-edit, known to fans as the Snyder Cut, is here to give you more. What details don't you know about Chips Ahoy? Take a wander down the cookie aisle at any grocery store and you're bound to be overwhelmed by options. More heroes. More villains. More breathtaking action scenes. More of DC's pantheon of classic characters, exercising their godlike abilities for good and evil. Not only are there tons of different brands, but there are a plethora of different flavors and types of cookies as well. One of the most popular cookies across the country is indeed Chips Ahoy. More of Snyder's singular, signature take on DC's massive superhero universe, and, of course, lots more Easter eggs. Look, Zack Snyder's Justice League is 4 hours long. Compared to the theatrical cut, of course it's going to have even more references to the comic books that inspired the whole thing. According to Statista, of all the major cookie brands, Chips Ahoy was the second top-selling cookie in the United States behind Oreos as of 2017. That's not a surprise. What is surprising, however, is just how well hidden some of them are. While plenty of the Snyder Cut's Easter eggs should be obvious to anyone who has a passing familiarity with DC's long history, others will only be caught by the most observant superfans of the company's comics and films. Thankfully, you really don't need a degree in multiversity to figure out what's a reference and what's not. All you need is this handy list, which compiles the best, and most obscure, Easter eggs seen in Zack Snyder's Justice League into one place. Made by Nabisco, which also happens to be the producer of Oreos, Chips Ahoy have been famously satisfying American sweet tooth since they first hit shelves in 1963, via Insider. There's a lot you may not know about the beloved chocolate chip cookie, which now comes in varieties like Reese's and double chocolate. You can focus on the action, the drama, and the majesty of the Snyder Cut. So the next time you go to dunk a few in a cold glass of milk, here's what you should know about the snack that's won over so many people. No one really knows where Chips Ahoy got its name. Have you ever wondered where the name, Chips Ahoy, even came from? As too, but unfortunately, there's no clear answer. Most people believe that it's a fun take on the old nautical adage, ships ahoy, which sailors would shout when they saw other vessels on the open waters. Leave the Easter egg hunting to us. Introducing the all-new Atom look, the Justice League is great, but do you really think a mere 6 heroes can prop up a 4-hour movie? Not even Superman is that powerful. Even with all of the apocalyptic action unfolding throughout the film's sprawling runtime, the Snyder Cut finds the time to introduce a few more fan-favorite characters to the DCEU. When one takes a look at the cookies themselves, they kind of appear as these seas of cookie dough with the little chocolate chips representing ships stranded on the seas, Biscuit People explained. However, Chips Ahoy may have not been the first to make the play on words. As rumored, Martian Manhunter appears in a few big scenes, and Wonder Woman's father, Zeus, and her #1 nemesis, Ares, enjoy some expanded screen time as well. However, the most exciting hero to show up in the Snyder Cut never gets to wear a supersuit, show off his powers, or fight Darkseid's minions, not yet, anyway. In the recut Justice League, Ryan Choi may only be Silas Stone's second in command, but comics readers know him better as the Atom, a hero with the ability to shrink at will. Ryan, who was created by writer Gail Simone, began his career as the protégé of the previous Atom, Ray Palmer, and took over Palmer's post at Ivy University when the elder professor went missing. Mental Floss did some digging and found that the phrase, Chips Ahoy, was first used in a Charles Dickens story all the way back in 1859. That's how Choi found Palmer's old biobelt, which is powered by a fragment of a white dwarf star. From there, it wasn't long before Choi began investigating all the weirdness that surrounds Ivy Town and its residents. Despite his powers, Ryan Choi remains an academic at heart, and for all their absurdity, his best adventures still have their roots in real-world science. Chips Ahoy! Old boy! We've pretty well eat them too, and we'll drown the crew, and we'll eat them too, Dickens wrote in his book, The Uncommercial Traveler. There are at least 1,000 chocolate chips in every package of Chips Ahoy. Part of what makes Chips Ahoy so delicious is the abundance of chocolate chips in every cookie. So when STAR, one of its first taglines back in the 60s was, the 16-chip cookie, promising at least 16 chocolate chips in every Chips Ahoy cookie, via Mental Floss. Nabisco later increased that promise to 32 chips to keep up with other cookie companies, but then dropped that back to 24 in the 80s. Eventually, they decided to simply promise at least 1,000 chocolate chips per 18-ounce package of cookies. That theory was contested by a group of third graders from North Carolina in 1996, as the Morning Call reports. The class, after counting the chocolate chips in their bag of Chips Ahoy, wrote to Nabisco claiming that there were only 680 chips. Labs dubs Choi the head of nanotechnology at the end of Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's not just a promotion. The company hosted a public recount and found that the kids had only counted the chips on the surface of the cookies. After counting every chip, they found there to be 1,181 chocolate chips in the bag. It's a premonition of things to come. To say, "I love you," one must know first how to say the I. At one point in Justice League, Aquaman rescues a seemingly doomed fishing boat called the Cortlandt, and while that ship appears in the original, theatrical cut of the movie, it takes on added significance with Zack Snyder at the helm. C. Snyder is a devoted follower of Ayn Rand, creator of the philosophical system known as objectivism and author of books like Atlas Shrugged. In fact, an adaptation of Rand's The Fountainhead is one of Snyder's dream projects, and has been in and out of pre-production for years. This would be the second film based on The Fountainhead. By the way, Gary Cooper and Patricia Neal starred in a previous adaptation back in 1949. Cortlandt is the name of an ambitious construction project in The Fountainhead designed by the book's hero, an architect named Howard Rourke, and the source of much of the book's drama. Phew. Chips Ahoy cookies have caused crimes at some point in your life. You've likely joked to your friends or family, "If you eat any of my cookies, I'll kill you." Of course, you were joking, but apparently, some people have said that and meant it. In 2014, the saint like all of Rand's protagonists, Rourke is a genius who refuses to compromise or submit to popular ideas, and who champions individualism among all else. Louis Post-Dispatch reported that a woman was strangled by her 49-year-old roommate when she ate 3 of his Chips Ahoy cookies for breakfast. She told the paper that she thought he was joking when he threatened to kill her, and that if her landlord hadn't shown up, she believes he really would have followed through on the threat. Yikes. That's not the only crime associated with Chips Ahoy cookies. Sound familiar? Not only is the story clearly near and dear to Snyder's heart, but the Cortlandt Easter egg feels eerily prescient given the Snyder Cut's long, convoluted history. 2 years later in 2016, in the town of Belleville, Illinois, there was a shooting that police say started with $8 and a bag of Chips Ahoy cookies, the Belleville News-Democrat says. It's only appropriate that it survived into the final product. The man behind the league forget the Justice League. It seems that some people take their Chips Ahoy very, very seriously. Chips Ahoy has had more than one mascot over the years. Frosted Flakes have Tony the Tiger. Keebler has Ernie the Elf. Without venerated DC Comics writer Gardner Fox, we may not have super teams at all. And Chips Ahoy currently has Chip, a walking, talking chocolate chip cookie. In 1940, when comics books' golden age was in full swing, Fox and his editor, Sheldon Mayer, had a blockbuster idea. What if some of DC's most popular heroes came together and formed their own team? A little while later, the Justice Society of America debuted in the pages of All-Star Comics number 3, with a roster featuring The Flash, Green Lantern, Hawkman. Doctor described as an animated, lovable optimist. In a press release, Chip returned as the face, or, as Nabisco calls him, the spokes cookie, of Chips Ahoy in 2020 after a 6-year hiatus. Fate, the Sandman, Our Man, the Spectre, and the Atom. Superhero comics would never be the same. Then, a few decades later, Gardner did it again. In the late 50s, DC found great success revamping its dormant superhero properties by adding sci-fi twists to established heroes like Flash and Green Lantern, ushering in the Silver Age of comics. You might see him in ads lounging in a hot tub of melted chocolate or dressing up for Halloween. But Chip wasn't always Chips Ahoy's mascot. Before the animated cookie appeared on the scene, there was the Cookie Man, via Biscuit People. As part of this revival, editor Julie Schwartz asked Gardner to revitalize the Justice Society, albeit with a new name, the Justice League. Inspired by comic books, his real name was Mort Meek, but he transformed into a superhero when an evil villain would try to steal his Chips Ahoy cookies. Gardner obliged, putting Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Aquaman, Flash, and Martian Manhunter on the same team for the first time. The Justice League made its debut in The Brave and the Bold number 28, and it's been with us ever since. Zack Snyder's Justice League pays tribute to the man who created the Justice League in Barry Allen's brand new introduction sequence, which is extra fitting, given that Gardner created the Golden Age Flash, too, by way of the speeding truck that threatens downtown Central City. Look carefully, and you'll see an advertisement for the Gardner-Fox Produce Company painted on the vehicle's side. Oh, and in case you missed it, the young woman who Barry saves from almost certain death is none other than Iris West, aunt to Kid Flash Wally West and Barry's future wife. The Cookie Man valiantly defeated the cookie thief to protect his sugary stash. He was replaced by the Cookie Guy in 2002, who later was replaced by Chip. There's a lot of debate over crunchy versus chewy Chips Ahoy. If you thought the debate between creamy and crunchy peanut butter was intense, just wait until you read the Reddit comments on the debate between original and chewy Chips Ahoy cookies. No, she doesn't get much to do in Justice League. But if Ezra Miller's long-gestating solo Flash film ever gets off the ground, she's expected to play a big role. A Starro is born Darkseid. In the unpopular opinion subreddit, one person stated that the chewy cookies, which came out in 1983, are better than the crunchy, aka the Anti-Monitor, Amazo, the crime syndicate of America. Over the years, the Justice League has faced off against all kinds of heavy hitters on their mission to ward off evil. Their first foe, however, was a little quirkier. The original ones. It's such a hot topic that it spurred nearly 600 comments, and it turns out it isn't such an unpopular opinion, after all. It seems that an even number of people are on both Team Chewy and Team Crunchy. Common complaints against the chewy Chips Ahoy is that they have a weird aftertaste and that they don't soak up milk. However, fans of the chewy cookies argue that they're perfectly soft and delicious and that the original Chips Ahoy are too crumbly and messy. Introduced alongside the League itself in Brave and the Bold No. 28, Starro is a purple, starfish-shaped alien parasite that can create its own clones, and attaches to the faces of its victims, robbing them of their free will. Between Steppenwolf's attacks, Darkseid's looming threats, and those pesky mother boxes to track down, Justice League doesn't really have the time to give Starro its moment to shine, but Zack Snyder's Justice League manages to sneak a little cameo in there anyway, albeit in a modernized and very DCEU-esque way. When Steppenwolf comes after the Atlanteans, he discovers the location of their long-hidden mother box by attaching a crawling, purple device to an Atlantean warrior's forehead. It's not quite the same thing, but for longtime DC fans, the homage is still pretty obvious. The secret of 6-1982. Before mankind knew it was called a mother box, they gave it another name. As the Snyder Cut reveals, Nazi forces found the mother box that humanity had pledged to hide forever in the final years of World War II. Soon afterward, the device was taken into American custody and it was given a new, albeit temporary, name, 6-1982. Eventually, 6-1982 made its way from the Department of Defense archives to STAR Labs, where Silas Stone used it in a last-ditch effort to save his son following a horrific accident. As you may already be aware, 6-1982 isn't a random string of numbers. It's a direct reference to Cyborg's original origin story. In June of 1982, or, you guessed it, 6-1982, DC Comics published the first issue of Tales of the New Teen Titans, a 4-issue miniseries that delved into the history of DC's New Teen Titans team, which was, at the time, one of the hottest books on the shelves. To put it in perspective, in terms of popularity, New Teen Titans' only real competition was Marvel's Uncanny X-Men. Naturally, this first issue was all about Cyborg, and his story follows the same major beats as the adaptation seen in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Although there are a few major differences. The accident that cripples Victor is caused by an extra-dimensional entity, not a car crash. His super intellect is the result of experiments his parents conducted before his accident, and there isn't a mother box to be found. Still, if you've seen the Snyder Cut, you know basically how the storyline of Tales of the New Teen Titans #1 unfolds, at least in general terms. From Strikers to Braxton and back again in the original theatrical cut of Justice League, the Parademon's subterranean nest is located underneath Braxton Island, which sits in the river that separates Gotham City from Metropolis. In Zack Snyder's Justice League, it's called Strikers Island. Why is that important? Well, for a couple of reasons. First, Strikers Island is also the location where Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice's climactic showdown against Doomsday takes place. Second, Stryker's Island has a long and storied history in DC Comics, in which it's the site of one of the country's biggest metahuman prisons. Located off the coast of Metropolis, Stryker's Island Penitentiary is basically Superman's equivalent of the Batman Rogues Gallery that is Arkham Asylum. It's where all of the Man of Steel's most fearsome foes are kept, at least when they're not out on the streets causing havoc. Also, like Arkham, Stryker's Island has appeared in quite a few DC media adaptations. It's been featured in Superman, the animated series, Smallville, and Supergirl, among others. Granny Knows Best. Zack Snyder's Justice League is full of treats for fans of Jack Kirby's Fourth World, the legendary comic book artist's biggest contribution to DC's canon. Not only does Steppenwolf finally get his due, but his boss, Darkseid, plays a major role in the movie. So does Darkseid's torture-loving second-in-command, Desaad. In the Snyder Cut, you get the infamous anti-life equation, references to the classic Legion of Superheroes story, The Great Darkness Saga, which details Darkseid's schemes in the 30th century. What looks like a boom tube, and Darkseid's deadly Omega beams, which serve as his signature weapon. If you're paying attention, you can also catch another one of Darkseid's lieutenants, the villainous Granny Goodness, standing next to the space warlord during the movie's big climax. Unfortunately, Granny doesn't get any lines during the film, but that doesn't mean that she's not a big deal. In New Gods lore, Granny Goodness is the person in charge of raising Apocalypse children into fearsome warriors. Don't be fooled by her name, though. While Granny talks like a kind, caring old grandmother, her child-rearing methods involve torture and brainwashing, and her orphanages are really prisons from which escape is almost impossible. In addition, Granny is also the commander of the Female Furies, Apocalypse Elite, all-female strike force, and primary antagonist to Mr. Miracle and Big Barda, a husband and wife couple who escaped Granny's clutches and fled to Earth, where they became heroes. In other words, it's no surprise to find Granny by Darkseid's side. Through her countless despicable deeds in the pages of DC Comics over the years, she's more than earned it. But where's his signal watch? Zack Snyder killed off the DCEU's version of Jimmy Olsen in the opening scenes of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, but thankfully, there are more than enough versions of Superman's pal to go around. One even appears in Zack Snyder's Justice League, if you know where to look. Remember Jerry, the cop who Lois Lane befriends during her daily vigil at Metropolis' ruined Superman monument? Well, he's played by none other than actor Mark McClure, who portrayed the Daily Planet star photographer in all of the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, as well as its Helen Slater-led spin-off, Supergirl. Oddly enough, McClure, who you might also recognize as Marty McFly's older brother, also had a cameo in the theatrical cut of Justice League, but it was a slightly different one. In that version of the movie, you can see McClure as a police officer at Iron Heights Penitentiary, where Barry Allen goes to visit his incarcerated father. As McClure explains, Justice League producer, comic book writer, and DC executive Jeff Johns, who started his career as an assistant to Superman, the movie director Richard Donner, called McClure back to the studio during reshoots after his first cameo was cut, ensuring that the one-time Jimmy Olsen still appeared on the big screen. Go, Wildcats, go! While Gotham sports fans are probably most familiar with the Knights, the comic's canonical name for the city's professional football team, chances are they'll also cheer for the Wildcats every now and then, too. In Zack Snyder's Justice League, the Wildcat is the mascot of Gotham City University, and Victor Stone was the star quarterback on the Wildcats before his accident cut his football career short. The Wildcats' legacy goes deeper than that, though. In 1989's Manhunter No. 17, the Gotham City Wildcats were a professional football team owned by a man named Tom Melcher. Unfortunately, the team was also home to a future supervillain. The Wildcats' star player, Victor Gover, had a metagene, which gave him enhanced abilities. This led to accusations of steroid abuse, which forced Melcher to cut Gover from the team. Infuriated, Gover assumed the name Sportsmaster and began hunting both Melcher and the Wildcats coach, attracting Batman's attention. Later, he also served as a member of the Suicide Squad. The Spirit of Vengeance STAR Labs isn't the only place where a future superhero is lurking in Zack Snyder's Justice League. The Gotham City Police Department is hiding one, too. He only appears in a single scene, but as in the theatrical cut of Justice League, That's GCPD Detective Crispus Allen briefing the commissioner on the parademon sightings around the city. Allen made his comic book debut in Detective Comics No. 742, and went on to become one of the primary leads of Gotham Central, a police procedural set in the DC Universe's most corrupt city. Later, Crispus Allen was killed at the hands of a dirty cop named Jim Corrigan. That wasn't the end for Allen, though. After his demise, the slain police officer became host to the Spectre, a supernatural entity who metes out divine justice, typically with an ironic twist. However, the Spectre needs a human host to keep him grounded, and, for better or worse, noble-minded Crispus was the perfect man for the job. In Brightest Day, in Blackest Night. Despite rumors, neither Hal Jordan nor Ryan Reynolds, who played the Green Lantern of Sector 2814 in the widely panned 2011 Green Lantern movie, make a surprise cameo in Zack Snyder's Justice League. There is a Green Lantern in the movie, though. As in Justice League's theatrical cut, one of the space cops shows up in the big Lord of the Rings-esque flashback scene, which shows Apocalypse's first invasion of Earth. Unlike the theatrical cut, however, this is more than a blink and you'll miss it cameo. This time, we can see the Green Lantern's face. We know exactly who he is. As it turns out, the Snyder Cut's Green Lantern is none other than Yalan Gur, one of Sector 2814's previous protectors. According to 1991's Green Lantern No. 19, Gur was once one of the most skilled lanterns in the entire Green Lantern Corps, and only became more formidable once his bosses, the Guardians of the Universe, removed his power ring's weakness against the color yellow. Unfortunately, all of that power went straight to Yalan Gur's head. With his newfound strength, Gur headed straight to Earth and enslaved China. In response, the Guardians gave Yalan Gur a new weakness, wood, which allowed his subjects to beat him with clubs. In the comics, this led to Gur's demise, although we know that the Snyder Cut has a different fate in store for him: death at the hands of Darkseid. Deathstroke. Combat evolved. The oddest Easter egg included in Zack Snyder's Justice League isn't just hard to see onscreen. It feels like it may actually be a complete accident. As in Justice League's theatrical cut, a brief scene near the end of the movie unites a newly freed Lex Luthor with Deathstroke the Terminator, played by Jesse Eisenberg and Joe Manganiello respectively. Lex tries to recruit Deathstroke by offering him a valuable piece of information, mainly, Batman's secret identity, and the whole thing ends on an ominous note, with the two villains agreeing to join forces. There's a little more to this scene, though. Deathstroke's sword is adorned with a very specific nod to the video game Halo? Yup, that's right. As spotted by a fan who got an in-person look at Deathstroke's suit at a special exhibition and confirmed by an artist at game developer Bungie, Deathstroke's signature weapon sports a logo from Microsoft's seminal first-person shooter. So what gives? As far as anyone can tell, this bizarre little reference is the result of a Google search gone wrong. Allegedly, an artist at Warner Brothers was trying to find an icon related to the League of Assassins, the shadowy cabal run by Batman villain Ra's al Ghul. Searching for Ra's al Ghul symbol, however, brings up a fan-modified Halo sigil. The most likely explanation is that someone saw those search results, mistook the design for a piece of DC canon, and threw it in the movie. Whoops. The most ambitious crossover event in history? While DC and Marvel have crossed over a few times in the comics, a big screen team-up between the Justice League and the Avengers doesn't seem to be in the cards, at least not officially. And officially, though, it's actually already happened, twice. The first potential Marvel reference in Justice League comes early on, just after Bruce Wayne visits Aquaman for the first time. As Bruce gets off his helicopter, you can see that the company that owns the aircraft is named Kviksilfur. That's Icelandic for Quicksilver, an Avenger and X-Men ally who, after recent events, needs no introduction. On one hand, that's kind of a stretch. On the other? Well, the guy is everywhere these days. Why not Zack Snyder's Justice League too? The other Marvel nod is a little more straightforward. During the big fight scene between Superman and the rest of the Justice League, Supes flings the Flash into the monument at Heroes Park, giving us a very clear look at some of the names engraved on the memorial. For comics fans, one should look very familiar: Ben Parker. Yup, that's right. In the DCEU, it looks like Peter Parker's uncle met his demise during Zod's attack, not at the hands of an anonymous robber.
Arkham Asylum, established 1974. You may be surprised to learn that, according to Zack Snyder's Justice League, Arkham Asylum was founded in 1974. Surely, with its Gothic architecture and long, storied history, Gotham City's premier psychiatric treatment facility must be older. But no. In this case, the Snyder Cut is on the right side of history. Arkham Asylum, or Arkham Hospital, as it's called in both its comic book debut and the DCEU, first appeared in Batman number 258, a 100-page comic cover dated October 1974. The homage doesn't stop there, either. Justice League's establishing shot of the not-so-venerated facility even resembles the first image of the asylum. Batman #258's lead story, which was drawn by Irv Novick and written by the incomparable Dennis O'Neil, begins like almost every great Arkham Asylum story does, with a breakout. In this case, it's a retired general named John Harris causing the trouble. Hoping to steal some uranium in order to build a nuclear bomb, Harris hires some goons to break Two-Face out of Arkham, only to find himself betrayed by the criminal at the soonest available opportunity. Two-Face isn't the only member of Batman's rogues gallery to show up in Arkham, though. In this tale, Joker is also confined in the prison, although thanks to a flip of his lucky coin, Two-Face decides to leave the clown prince of crime behind bars. If it's not broke, don't cut it. Zack Snyder's Justice League is superior to Justice League's theatrical release in practically every way, but the original version of the film did have some pretty fun Easter eggs. Well, good news. The very best of them survived the transition, and they appear in the Snyder Cut too. First off, while telling Bruce Wayne all about his skills, including the languages he knows, Barry Allen mentions that he's fluent in sign language, Gorilla Sign Language. He quickly corrects himself. That's actually a pretty useful skill for the Scarlet Speedster to have. As Flash fans know, the Speedster's rogues gallery contains a few different simian foes, including the fearsome Gorilla Grodd. Next, as Bruce, Barry, and Diana gawk at the bat signal from an airport tarmac, you can catch a glimpse of the Ace Chemicals plant in the background. That's where the Joker fell into the vat of goop that transformed him into the Clown Prince of Crime, and where he took his therapist, Harleen Quinzel, to make her into Harley Quinn. It also exploded in spectacular fashion in Birds of Prey, and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. If you're curious about where the events of the Snyder Cut happen to fall in the DCEU timeline. Finally, as before, Spy Kids, Sin City, and The Haunting of Hill House star Carla Gugino returns to voice the Kryptonian spaceship, as she did in both Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. Gugino is one of Zack Snyder's frequent collaborators, having also worked with him in Watchmen as well as Sucker Punch. She's a great actor who probably deserves a much bigger role in the DCEU, but if this vocal cameo is all we can get, we'll take it. You are not alone by this point. You probably know the story behind Zack Snyder's Justice League. In March of 2017, while the original theatrical release of Justice League was in post-production, Zack Snyder's 20-year-old daughter Autumn died by suicide. Instead of pressing forward with the film, Snyder did what pretty much any father would do. He decided to leave the project in order to grieve with his family. At that point, Snyder had already screened a rough cut of the movie for Warner Brothers executives and select others, and everyone decided that some reshoots were required. And so, with Snyder unavailable, Warner Brothers turned to Avengers director Joss Whedon to put together some additional material. Whedon didn't just film a few extra scenes, though. According to reports, he reshot at least half of the movie, cutting major characters, replacing big action scenes, and adding a lot more humor to the film. With this new version, Snyder finally has the opportunity to show the world Justice League as he originally envisioned it, as well as work through some of the trauma surrounding its original production. Naturally, the entire movie is dedicated to Autumn, which is what makes this particular Easter egg so poignant. As Bruce Wayne and Barry Allen drive toward the Central City Airport, the camera lingers on a billboard for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, an organization dedicated to saving lives and bringing hope to those affected by suicide. If you or someone you know is having suicidal thoughts, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK, 8255, or text HOME to the crisis text line at 741741.